Hi, everyone. So we're getting started now. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. I'm Karen Farkas, I am the Parent-Child Representation Program Manager at OPDS. As Caroline emailed, I think all of you, or maybe just the administrators, and hopefully it made it to all the attorney and staff inboxes as well. Today, what we're going to be doing is talking through our updated guidance that I believe everyone has been aware is in the pipes. For the last couple months, the PCRP team has been working together really to kind of digest the issues that we have heard from attorneys about the structure that we currently have in the reporting model, the challenges that it provides to you, and also thinking about like OPDS as an agency about what the purpose of this data is for us and making sure that we're only asking you to collect no more and no less than the data that we can actually use in a worthwhile way to support your practice and the clients that you serve. So that's really the impetus for these changes today that we're going to be talking about. Does everyone see the PowerPoint slide here? Yep, cool. So this is the agenda for today's meeting. First, we're just going to briefly overview the importance of data. Then we are going to have like an explanation of why we are updating the data. Then we are going to provide an overview of the new framework, highlighting what is the same and what is different. We'll let you know that it's mostly the same, but we're going to highlight those two things. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the updated process for submitting the spreadsheets to OPDS. And then we are going to explain the process moving forward for when attorneys and staff have questions about how to accurately record timekeeping and case reporting and case counting moving forward. So we're going to start with Gloria Vidal. I'll first just start with from OPDS on the call. We have myself. We have Caroline Meyer, the PCRP analyst, Gloria Vidal, the juvenile data analyst, Nora Van Dusen, juvenile defense counsel, and Shannon Flowers, juvenile resource counsel. So for the next slide, Gloria Vidal is going to share a bit about the importance of data from a program support and evaluation perspective.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. My name is Gloria Vidal, and like Karen said, I'm the data analyst for the team. So I wanted to put together a graphic that shows more or less like why we're asking for the PCRP data, just to give some context, because I think, you know, when you're putting in a bunch of data that you don't know where it's going or how it's been used, you can have some questions about like why it's being tracked. So I wanted to give some context to all like the great work that you guys are doing. So this is kind of like a cycle that shows program implementation and evaluation. And for our purposes, the PCRP program is the model that we're talking about. And so usually when a program is implemented, it's based on some sort of prior research that shows that the model has a positive impact. And so I think the impetus for PCRP and continuing to expand PCRP is that other jurisdictions have shown through research that this model works and helps kids and families. And so for us to be able to eventually evaluate our program, we'll need to be collecting data on a regular basis to understand whether or not the program is being implemented with fidelity or in the way that it was intended to be implemented. So that is essentially what we're doing with the monthly spreadsheets that you guys are submitting to us. We're looking at the different metrics that we have as a program and that have been outlined for us from national organizations. about what PCRP type models need to be achieving and what the practice looks like. And so the different things that you guys are submitting on a monthly basis are helping us to ensure that there's adherence to the program model. And that will set us up to look at the actual impact of the model through a program evaluation, which we hope to do eventually. And the impact will eventually be turned into guidance and reports that we can give to funders, garner support. So it's essentially like a cycle of like continuing to do research, showing the impact, and being able to sustain and expand the program.
Thanks, Gloria. This is just a reminder that if you're not speaking, if you could please put yourself on mute so we don't have any background noise. We are trying to actually record this so that attorneys and staff who are not able to attend will have access to this later. Caroline Meyer will be going over this next slide for us.
Oops. Am I on, Karen? You cut out there for a second and I wasn't sure if it was me or.
It's you, Caroline. It's your slide.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Can you hear me okay?
You sure can. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, important question. Why are we updating the data? I promise it is not to make anyone's life more difficult. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We're really trying to, limit the confusion by all of you and also limit the confusion when we are responding to questions. And so we have spent a lot of time going back through the questions, the most common questions that we get. And we've now, now that we're at 10 counties, we've had some time to assess what are the most common questions? What are the areas that cause the most confusion? And so it's really coming from a place of wanting to make this process more user-friendly for all of us. From brand new attorneys trying to understand what this reporting is, to, we have a new data analyst, in Gloria, and she's working really hard to help us refine what we can track and how best to do that. And really, just making it more intuitive, more self-explanatory. And so through feedback from providers, we've been able to identify what are the terms that are unclear, they're causing the most confusion. We see a lot of entries listed as other, which ultimately is not helpful to us. It's not helpful for us to track. It was obviously put in there originally to sort of be, to be used for things that don't fit in neatly in another category. But what we realize, if too many people are using that, then that becomes a large amount of data we can't use for our purposes. There were several unused data points that we just weren't using on a regular basis, and so pulled those out. And then obviously with Nora's help on the delinquency side, really being able to focus on what items are we not able to capture on the delinquency side that we need to going forward. So that's really sort of the first part of that. And then the second piece is assessing the data on our end and being able to run the reports we need to be able to show the outcomes. We've listed just a few ways. The Family Justice Initiative. We have, now that we have an in-house data analysis, we have Gloria as a data analyst, but she can then have important conversations with the rest of the team where we talk about how are we using this? And if this is how we want to use it, how do we need to refine how we get the data to be able to give us that outcome? And so we've had some really in-depth conversations over the last several weeks to sort of refine those things. As you know, we've talked about the OPDS case management system and how that's on at least an 18-month to 2-year track at this point. And so this Excel format is what we have until we get that new system. And so trying to make the best use of what we have in the meantime. And then the legislature is always an important piece of that. We always have to be prepared to give them the data that they need to be able to give us the funding. I mean, obviously, we don't get anywhere without the funding from the legislature. So we always have to.
Hi, just a reminder that if you're not on mute,
to that.
Please put yourself on mute. Thank you.
So we wanted to talk about, sorry, I'm getting a bad network quality again. Hopefully you can hear me. We wanted to talk briefly about what is the same in the reporting and what has changed. And the good news is most of what you will be doing will stay the same. You know, we hope that we've limited the changes. There's still 2 tabs, one for your open case report and one for activity report. The columns are all still in the same format. There won't be any restructuring of your columns. The case count, the instructions for how you count your cases is really the same. We've provided a little bit of clarification, but we haven't actually changed the case count practice. And then most of the drop downs are the same, but that's of course what you're going to see in what we're going to show you next is what has changed in the drop downs. And again, we're creating a new updated guidance document for you, but much of the guidance is the same. We're just putting it all into one document with separate sections.
Thanks, Caroline. So I'll pick up with what is different, and I'll start with what is different on the open case report tab. So the first change, and again, like we mentioned before, all of these changes are really in response to the feedback we've gotten from providers and also observations of continuous errors we saw on providers' reports that we asked ourselves, well, if so many providers are doing it this way, should we just do it that way if that's so intuitive? And one of the things that we often saw was when attorneys are representing multiple siblings, all the different case numbers were kind of crunched into that case number report, as opposed to just putting the case number of the oldest child. And so, especially in light of the new way OJD is now counting case numbers and petitions in a term of wardship, we thought that we might just, accommodate our spreadsheet to accommodate for that practice and that change. So moving forward, while the case count itself of representing multiple siblings will stay the same, how that is reported on your open case report will be different. And instead of just reporting the case number of the oldest child and that oldest child's name, when you're representing a group of multiple siblings, they will actually each have their own line. Another thing that is different on the open cases report is the status of youth child placement. And so the changes on this one is adding more options to account for the reality of delinquency practice and potential placements that youth in delinquency proceedings encounter. So this again was really just to correctly capture what happens in a delinquency case. So we added a couple options for this. And then last, and this is something, as you know, particularly those providers that have been doing PCRP reporting for some time, is we've had almost like an empty petition column that we haven't really used, but has been staying there in anticipation of this updated guidance from OJD that we finally got in. So we're in conversations with OJD to make sure that we accurately understand the business process and exactly how they will be capturing the new petition numbers as they might come up. So we're going to clarify this for you, but really it's just knowing moving forward, we are going to use that petition number where applicable, that petition column where we really hadn't before. Okay, so what is different on the activity case report? So this is the other tab that I'm starting on. So One thing that is different is the amount of activities. So our most recent activity case report had 13 options for activities, and we have lessened those to 5. I think the biggest change is that we actually are collapsing all court appearances to just be court. So instead of actually having to say whether it's a permanency or a review or whatnot, we're actually, if it's court, whatever kind of court appearance it is, whether before it's a referee or a judge or a mandated appearance in the hallway to potentially negotiate before your appearance, it's all going to be court in your activity reporting. Drafting motions and briefs are the same, CRB is the same. We are collapsing, we're basically changing case prep and analysis and case-related meetings to be other casework. And we are collapsing client meeting and initial client meeting to be called client contact instead. Some other differences are occurring on the activity case report in the outcomes column. And so a main way that is changing is we have several more outcomes and we changed some of the outcomes, and we did that in part to allow for us to change the court appearances to just be court, because the outcomes will now better inform us what happened in court, because we found that a lot of the times the questions about how to capture court appearances were really hard to answer without understanding the substance of the appearance and what occurred there versus what it was called. And that was really what was important to us in the tracking. And so by just getting that in the outcome section, we felt we could get that and hopefully make it easier for attorneys to capture that time. So we removed from some categories. We also added some categories. And again, many of these changes were to account for delinquency practice. And also because as people who practice in this area know, where the child is staying, how often they are moving placements is a really important thing that we want to track. So we also wanted to include that as part of the potential outcomes, particularly to figure out what happens at shelter hearings and whatnot. So that informed a lot of the changes on this part of the report. And there's also some additional guidance that we are providing to use the activity outcome section of the activity case report, as opposed to before where we were asking that you put something, not to leave it blank if nothing fit. Moving forward, if honestly none of the outcomes fit, you can leave it blank. The other thing, and again, this is just to kind of make sure that we're capturing the pieces that are important for all the components of the program, we are also allowing for multiple outcomes to be reported if there is a change in placement happening alongside another important outcome. For instance, if there's a jurisdictional finding and a change in placement, there would be 2 outcomes being reported on 2 separate lines. And again, this is not, there's going to be more materials about this. I'm just highlighting it for this stage of the presentation. Another thing we're going to do, and this is really allowed now because of how we're changing how multiple siblings are reported in the open case report, is that when you are representing siblings and a case closes as to one child and not another, there will actually be scenarios where you use a different child's case number in the activity case report, as opposed to just the oldest child's case number. So while the large majority of time, the guidance will be exactly how it is now, that you all use the oldest child's case number in the activity report, there's one exception for when something occurs that closes a case for one child that you represent in a group of multiple siblings. Another difference on the activity case report are changes to the dismissal reason. Again, we removed some categories, we added some categories. Similar to all the other changes that we've discussed today, they're really predominantly to make sure that we can track the stages of a case and the outcomes that are important for us to do to ensure fidelity to the program and run the appropriate reports to funders and legislatures and also report back to you. And also to make sure that the drop downs allow for delinquency practitioners to track those dismissal reasons in those cases. So again, while a number of them stayed the same, we added several to be responsive to those reasons. So the updated materials. So what they are, they will replace all current guidance. So none of the guidance that you currently have will be what you should look to anymore. They are intentionally succinct and they are largely process maps, or I call them process charts there, and definitions. I do want to be really clear that the content of them are largely exactly the same in the sense of the guidance is not contradictory. There's a small percentage of it that is additional, so is like contradictory to previous guidance, but the large majority of it is just really elucidating, like to making it more clear, making it more user-friendly, so it's easier for people to follow the rules and they seem less complicated. So what the documents are, it's going to be one 6-page document with 5 sections. There will be one page that is a case counting guidance, one page that is guidance on how to capture the status of youth child placement. One will be how to use the open case report tab. Another one will be about how to use the activity report tab. And then there will be one that breaks down in more clarity the definitions and applications of the activity outcome and dismissal columns of the activity report. And so now we're going to go through, Gloria is going to go through each of the documents that you will receive later today, but each of the documents just to highlight a little bit about how they are structured and what they, the kind of information that they provide and how you can use them.
Thanks, Karen. So this is the first document. And sorry that the text is a little bit small. When you get it in a PDF, it'll be more legible. This is the document that is some guidance around how to count cases. And so we have an overview section that tells you unless a case falls into one of these 4 categories, the case counts as 1. So vast majority of cases will count as 1. The first table that you see, open case count amount by case type and case stage, breaks out the different kinds of cases that we have by the case type drop-down menu items, and what the potential case counts would be in the pre-trial / pre-adjudication stage, and then also post-disposition, because you'll see for delinquency cases, the case count changes depending on the case stage. The dependency cases don't change. And then for TPR purposes, we're considering the TPR case just to be in like the pre-adjudication stage. So there's just like one case count in one stage for TPR cases. So this is how you will count your cases unless the case is complex or there's some additional like circumstance or complicating factor to the case. So the second table shows you the different circumstances in which you would count a case differently than the first table shows. And so that's in delinquency post-disposition representation cases. So we list the breakdown of how you would decide to count your case in that situation. For dependency, the case count differs depending on if you're representing multiple children or a parent. And then there's also some additional information on what to do in the instance that there's a new petition filed on an existing case. TPR, there's some differences in how you would count for a parent versus multiple children. And then we have some more information on complex cases, what the different complex case types are, and how you would count those. So it's just an overview of the case counting document. This one is the second document that gives some guidance on how to use the drop-down menu items in the status of youth / child placement column in the open cases report. And so one additional change that we're making that I don't think Karen referenced is that for the status of youth child placement variable, we're going to ask that it just needs to be completed when you're representing a child or a youth client rather than a parent client. So hopefully that will make things a little bit more straightforward. So you're going to select the drop-down option that best describes the child's status or placement at the end of the month. We realize that this can change through the month, so you'll just report as of the last day of the month. And then in the chart that's called Status of Youth / Child Placement drop-down options and descriptions, you'll see that we break this down by case type and then also by case stage, because some of the drop-down items are really only applicable to pretrial cases or post-disposition cases, or just delinquency cases. So dependency and TPR are lumped together. You'll just have to look for the relevant item for those cases. And so if you can look at the bottom row in each of those sections, you'll see that there is an option for other. And other should only be selected if no other option is appropriate for where the child or the youth is or their status. And then when you select other, we'll ask that you enter the actual status or placement in the comment section. If you didn't select other, then you don't need to enter anything in the comment section. But you'll see that we have a few more delinquency specific options. So we're hoping that will make things easier for you guys. Okay, so this is, I think, like the general open case report guidance document. So it gives a pretty brief overview of how to use that specific report. So you'll see that the top table is showing you all of the columns in the open cases report except for the comments column, because comments are just comments and we didn't think we needed to explain to you guys on how to use that one. But you'll see there's the name of the column, and then underneath it is the format that we would like you to put the data in. So when it says one case number only, that's because we can only have one case number in each little cell. Again, like Karen said, if there are multiple siblings, then you can enter them in different rows rather than putting all of their case numbers in the same little cell in the same row. Where we indicate that there's drop-down options only, that's because if there's a drop-down menu, we would only want to use those options. And then for the date variables, we need you to enter it in that format with the slash. That helps us a lot. So then the notes section is just kind of like the biggest takeaways on how to use the columns and the drop-down items too. So You'll see that like in PCRP case count, there's like just a general sentence that says for additional guidance, see case counting guidance. So that's going to tell you essentially go back to the case counting document that we already reviewed. Okay, so below the table you see we've listed all of the drop-down menu columns and the different items in the drop-down menus. So hopefully that's clear. And then at the bottom we have some notes around like kind of more complicated data entry issues. So when you have a client with multiple dependency petitions, if it's a pre-petition case or if there's multiple siblings on the same petition, we thought you guys would want more guidance on how to use the open cases report. So we've put it there. You guys can see that there's again another like link back to the case counting guidance, because in the case counting guidance we have information on how to count multiple dependency petitions. So we're hoping that within the 6 pages you'll be able to link to where you need to be looking. And then this, can you go back one, Karen? So this is the general guidance for using the activity report. Looks a lot like the open cases general guidance. So again, we have a table with all of the columns, their names, the format that we'd like you to enter the data in, and then some general notes on how to use it. We have the drop-down menu items, and then additional information on what to do if you have multiple siblings on the same petition, or if there are multiple court outcomes, how to treat those. So Karen has already stated what we would do in those situations, but we want to let you guys have it in writing. Okay, so this is the last section. It's 2 pages. We tried to get it onto one, but just couldn't, so sorry about that. Essentially, we know from the questions you guys have and from looking at your guys' reports that the activities, the court activity outcomes, and then the dismissal reasons have been challenging in knowing when to use which item. And so what we did is we laid out all of the different items and gave you a description or a definition as best we could. So you'll see in this section we have the activities, and we don't have a ton of variation for between case types for how you will use the different activity drop-downs. So they're just all here, and they should be applicable to all of the case types except for CRB, I think is just for dependency. So you'll see there's definition, and then on the next page we have the descriptions for the court activity outcomes and the dismissal reasons. So this is a little bit more complicated than the activities because some of the drop-down items in the outcomes section are just for certain case types. So we can look at the top section, which is delinquency. It's a little cut off, but that says delinquency. And so in the last 4 drop-down items for delinquency, commitment, probation, alternative disposition, and suppression are specific to delinquency. You wouldn't be using those in a dependency or a TPR case. So we have them listed there. And then some of those drop-down menu items are specific to a certain case stage. So some of them are pretrial and some of them are dispositions. So we tried to indicate that for you also. For TPR, you'll see that we have rights terminated and relinquishment there, and that's really specific to TPR. So you won't see those items listed under delinquency or dependency. So we have the outcomes in the first section, and then In the second section to the right, we have the dismissal reasons. And so for every time you select dismissed as the court activity outcome, we'll ask you to select a dismissal reason. And again, some of the dismissal reasons are specific to a certain case type. In the delinquency section, you'll see that we have a dismissal reason that's called unfit to proceed. And that's really specific to delinquency, so you wouldn't use that in the other case types, so it's just found under the delinquency section. And so we've tried to list out everything in clear, concise ways that are also distinct from all the other options, so that there's not going to be overlap between two of the drop-down menu items, so you won't have to spend time thinking about like, oh, which one should I choose? It should be pretty straightforward. And so that is the end of the guidance documents.
Thanks, Gloria, Caroline.
So yeah, we wanted to, I know that's a lot of information. Thanks, Gloria, that was really helpful. We're all sort of adjusting to the updated guidance, so it's helpful for me to go back through it again as well. We have talked about some, just as well as feedback from consortium providers, as well as some of our internal discussions around the, we are changing the process
Caroline,
for how
you froze up for a second. If you want to just start from the top.
Okay. Can you hear me now? I'm going to take my video off. Hopefully that'll help. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So what I was saying was, based on feedback from consortia providers, as well as our own internal discussions over time about the potential for conflicts with opposing parties, we have changed, we're going to change the way that consortia attorneys provide their reports to us. So rather than sending them through the contract administrator, we're going to ask the attorneys in consortia contracts to submit their reports directly to the PCRP caseload reports email. And we've provided the email address again for you here.
And Caroline, I'll add to that, you know, of course we want, I mean, it's something that we've thought of internally, and also, you know, we've heard some feedback from providers of the same with questions about that process. And so we just wanted to make sure that we, you know, attorneys, of course, should be mindful about their obligations with regard to attorney-client privilege and confidentiality. And so we didn't want that process to interact with that in a bad way. And on that note, we also wanted to use this as a reminder to attorneys to really not use the comment section in the reports for anything aside from where the guidance asks you to use it. So there are situations where if you use other as a drop down, we ask that in the comment section you provide clarification, but aside from that, it really should be blank. We've had situations where providers, you know, provide a lot of additional information there, and that's really, you know, not necessary for us and probably not best practice. So we just wanted to use this as a reminder to not use that comment section for anything aside from the suggested and advised way.
Great. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was we're going to be providing these documents to you later today. We want to give you some time to review them, process them, adjust to the changes that, although, you know, we do believe these are improvements for all of us, we do think that you will find it easier to report with these changes. We know it takes time to get used to them. And so we're asking that you start reporting in March. So that means February's data can still be in the existing format unless you choose. I mean, in the past, when we've made changes, some attorneys prefer to start right away, and that is certainly an option. But we want to give you the option of adjusting, getting your attorneys up to speed. And so we would ask that you report using this new format, and we will of course be sending out the updated spreadsheet for your reporting. That'll come out today. The last thing I was going to say about the change in how we receive those reports, that only applies to consortia providers. So if you're a large public defender office, you're still going to send us, we're still going to get one report with all of the attorney reports. We do not want those reports individually sent.
Same with law firms as well.
Right, same with law firms. And so I think that concludes what we have to present to you. We certainly did want to leave some time for questions. We know it's a lot of information and you may need to process it before you have questions, and you know, we're happy to respond via email as well, or follow up with us after the call, but we're happy to answer questions. We would ask that any emailed questions be sent to both me and Gloria. We're going to try our best again to respond timely, consistently, using this updated guidance. And you know, it's going to take us all a little bit to get on the same page, but by sending the email to both Gloria and I, we'll be able to get back to you, hopefully, like I said, in a timely manner, and we will double check with each other that we're providing consistent guidance. So David, I see you have. Yeah. Your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. I've got if I was following all of what I saw on screen and Gloria's descriptions, and I think I did, but I want to clarify, since I just went through and revised my database to fit the last new and improved process, and Mark Lang's word stuck in my head is, how many times are we going to be revising our databases to try to do this? I appreciate we got a couple months to go in and untangle this. Part of this was what I used to do for reporting on children, is trying to track every single case number that related to a child's petition. And when I'm representing children, I would have associated with each child's matter in my database the amount of credits that went with that child. And then so I would have a line for that case number, child's matter, and so 1 credit, and then the next kid within the same family unit that I'm representing would be a 0.5, for example. Now, it sounds like we're now going back, or going to be using that approach where each child is a separate line, which is, I can figure it out in my database. Are we then also then tracking that as 1, 0.5, 0.5, so that by the time you get to the end of your spreadsheet at OPDS, it's still going to tally up to the right credits, arguably. So that's how that's going to show, instead of the dependency child, dependency children. Get rid of the dependency children category altogether.
It's still, Gloria, did you want to answer that? You're probably best suited. Okay, go.
So you'll still use the dependency children case type when you're representing multiple children. You'll just enter their case numbers and names in separate rows. So it is how you were using the open cases report, David, previously, where you had the child's case number and name, then you count the first one as 1, and then the next child's case number and name, and you give them a 0.5 case count. You'll still use dependency children for all of those multiple children cases, and that will help us understand why you're giving a 0.5 case count to a child.
Yeah, since a lot of times the last names aren't going to give you a clue. So, yeah. So all right, so that helps. The other question, in looking at the activities tab, it looks like comment section disappeared. Is that just not showing, or is there going to be I understand what Karen said, and I agree, people shouldn't be putting their billing descriptions on that on that category. But for like our county that has a family treatment court, unlike most of the other counties, I was using that as the descriptor to say family treatment court, so that you would understand what was going on with those, because you'd see a lot of that within a given month. But that's gone now, so there's nowhere to reflect that.
The comments section is still there. I made the decision to not include it in the guidance documents because it just took up more space. And as you can see, we have a limited amount of page space on these guidance documents, but the comments section will still be there for you to use. And we would like you to primarily use it for when you're selecting other as a drop-down menu item. And so for the family treatment court, we've also made the change where all court hearings and events are just called court. And so it's really not, we're not trying to differentiate between the different kinds of court hearings or events now. So I don't think you need to put family treatment court in the comments, since we're not analyzing by the type of court event any longer.
And I'll also add, even though we're not as far as we want to be, one of OPDS's goals and also PCRP goals is to coordinate with OJD data in a more regular and sophisticated way. And, you know, doing that will also get us details that we don't need to get it from you. And, you know, and I hope that as we chip at that, we'll chip at other data points as well.
Yeah, get some data dumps right out of OJD. A related question on the separate line per kid. If I'm representing a parent that has 5 kids, do you want me to have each petition or each case number listed for that parent with only one of them showing a credit?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So going back to the old fashioned of doing things.
Right.
All right.
And David, can I just speak to, and Karen, you might have touched on this. I think I cut out there for a second, but we are sensitive to the fact that we have changed the reporting more than contractors would like, and we, you know, please trust that we do take that into account, and we don't make changes unless we feel it's absolutely necessary. So I hope I can confidently say we won't be changing it again until at least the next contract cycle, which would be a year from now. I haven't taken blood from Gloria and Karen on that, but, you know, I promise that, you know, we are all very, very concerned about limiting changes, and we try to make changes that will benefit everyone when we do make them. So
I appreciate that. I would be happy to brainstorm on any things in advance as well. I know that you guys do your internal teams and stuff, but I prefer to give the input well in advance when I know these things are being considered rather than after the fact.
Yeah, what I will say though on that, David, we appreciate that. And that has worked well in the past when we started with a few counties. Now that we have so many counties involved and we have heard literally from every county, we really felt like we had some good feedback already in advance, you know, mostly in the form of emails that we could then look and say, what are the most, so it was very helpful to us. What are the primary concerns? What are we getting the most questions about? And so while we didn't have time to send out a draft of this, we did feel like it was well vetted, both, you know, with our internal discussions, but much of it was focused on feedback from contractors. So please understand that all of your input on that was helpful. All right, we're going to try to get through these other questions. So I think Stacy was next. Stacy Lowe.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that we were going to be getting a copy of this guidance that we've reviewed here today, as well as you know, a new set of, I can't remember what you called it, everything, all of the rules, how we're supposed to do everything.
Yes. You're going to
And
get everything. You're going to get the
Exactly.
PowerPoint. You're going to get the PowerPoint presentation. We can send you the recording if you have attorneys that weren't able to make it and you want that. You're going to get the new updated spreadsheet with the changes in the drop downs, and you're going to get the 6-page guidance document that Gloria walked you through.
And then my second question was, I want to just make sure I understood what was just discussed. I understand listing each child and their case number, but I was a little unclear. When you represent a parent who has 5 kids, are we listing the parent and then all of the case numbers on the same row, or just the oldest child's case number, or are we listing that parent 5 times with each of the 5 case numbers?
So our guidance is to list all of the case numbers, but I mean, I can check with Karen following this call and make sure that I am giving the correct guidance before I give it.
And the reason I ask is because I'm not sure how I would be able to do that in our timekeeping, because it tracks per case what you're doing.
This again, we know that you guys just got all this information said to you and you haven't been able to read it to digest it, but what you in the activity reporting is still just going to be the oldest child's case number. That is going to be unchanged. The only time you will use a distinct child's case number is where one of those children's case was dismissed. And so we want to know that that particular case was dismissed. But every other situation, you will only be using the one case number. So I think your second question, our guidance does not change that at all.
And so does the same apply to a TPR? So let's say I have a parent on a dependency case and a TPR in the case count list, the first page, I would list that parent 5 times with each different case number for the dependency, and then 5 times, one for each case number on the termination.
Are you talking about the activity report or the open case report?
The open case report.
For the open case report, that's one of the things. We will include that in the guidance at the end of the day to be very clear. The reason why we wanted to do that was predominantly to make sure that attorneys could, when needed, specify the situation as per child. We'll think a little bit about whether or not that needs to happen on the parent side as well to get the correct data. So it's a very good question, Stacy. We are anticipating that we are going to get questions that might help us need to refine, hopefully not that many, but that is one. So we'll add very clear guidance about that in the materials you get later today.
Okay, I appreciate that, because
I appreciate your question.
That would be a real challenge.
No, I appreciate that. And we want to, again, we don't want to make you do more. We don't want to make you do any more or any less than what we need to kind of get the information as would be helpful. So we'll think about that and make sure it's clear.
I think Dave Hansen was next.
Yeah, I do want to just be thoughtful about time. We will obviously answer any questions we get by email. We'll stay on to answer all of the questions that people who have their hand raised right now, but it is 12:58. We're going to keep on recording. So don't feel like you have to stay on if you have other things you need to get to. And you can email us and we'll be able to respond potentially even better than live right now.
So my question has to do with court activity outcomes. In Yamhill County, at least, a relinquishment and a commitment virtually never happen in court. It's done by motion, or a relinquishment would just never happen in court. Dismissed often does not happen in court, but often is via motion only. Change in placement happens sometimes in court, but not always. So if they're not being, so those things might not be captured if that's the only place you're trying to capture them.
So David, I think that is a question that I'd love to explore more with you offline to make sure that we better understand what you're saying and we can think about whether or not how that fits in with our data reporting scheme. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Gardner was next.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your work on this. Obviously, it's hard for us, but I know it's hard for you, so thanks. I had a bunch of questions, but the one I was going to ask, it comes out on the activity outcomes page, and what it was, it had to do with, I'm just asking what you're supposed to enter, and forgive me if it's obvious. If you have both parents having at least one allegation adjudicated on a dependency matter, that's called jurisdiction, if I'm not mistaken. If you have one parent making an allegation, an admission or approving one allegation for one parent, but not for the other parent, what is it entered as? What's the outcome?
So if there aren't any other outcomes in the drop-down menu that happened at that hearing, you wouldn't enter anything because we only want to capture when jurisdiction happens for like the entire case, not just as to one parent.
So you wouldn't enter anything for the parent who made an allegation admission, and if the other parent's case or the hearing at large led to some other activity that's in the drop-down menu, pick that one, leave jurisdiction for later?
Yes, that's
great.
correct.
Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Linda.
I think my question was kind of answered in a previous question, but you said that we're listing each child has its own line. Is that correct?
In the open case report, yes. If there's, if let's say there are 3 children on one petition and you're representing those 3 kids, then you'll list each case number and sibling name in a separate row on the open case report. You'll give the first kid a 1.0 case count and each subsequent child a 0.5 case count.
And then so that in the activity report, is it going to be just listed on one line for the family?
Yeah, so for the activity report, you'll just use the oldest child's case number and case name, though case name is optional, so it's up to you. And then for that, like that group of kids, you'll just enter one row for each activity.
Okay, I got a little worried because I thought we were going to list them all on the activity report and trying to figure out what time went with each child and.
No.
Okay, perfect.
We hope we're not making it that complicated.
All right, that was all I needed. Thank you.
Okay.
And Tom Horton.
Thanks. So similar to Gardner's question, if at a pretrial conference the case is left on for trial, we don't put anything for outcome, or a second pretrial conference is set, just nothing, no entry for outcome.
Yeah. So if something.
Unless a change in placement happens or something.
Right.
If the outcome is not listed in the list of outcome options that we've given you, then you don't need to select an outcome. You can just leave it blank.
Okay. And then still a 3 credit cap on cases, or are we?
You mean for child clients?
Yeah. Like
that
if there's multiple kids, yeah.
That was removed in the last round of contracting.
Okay, maybe I missed that. And then is it critical to enter like a no in the column where it's a yes, no, or a NA rather than just leaving it blank?
I'll have to go back and check. I think we got rid of the NA.
I think Gloria is there unless they put something else in.
Sorry, Caroline, you cut out.
I was just saying, doesn't it? I think it's still, the spreadsheet is still, the default is NA unless you put something in it.
Right. So yeah, for people who are not entering directly into the spreadsheet, if there's NA, I wouldn't say that you need to replicate the NA in like your case management system, but for like the case manager variable, it's yes or no, I believe. So if you haven't used a case manager, we would like you to put no.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. So those are all our raised hands for today. Thanks for getting through this with us. I hope it was, I hope you saw some of the benefits that will be coming from this new reporting framework. And we will be sending out the spreadsheet, the PowerPoint, the guidance later to you today, and we will be putting a copy of the recording, I think, on the portal. So we're going to try to figure out that too and let you know how to find it if you want to look at it again or if you want to share it with any of your colleagues. So thank you again very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.